Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so I guess we can get started. The agenda for today's session is on the screen. I hope it is visible clearly.
Yes,
Okay, so again, this is going to be the activity next to what we did in last session. We created a form and we tried some updates via the hard coded values, the submit, save option, and cancel option we are handling already. But again, this needs to go to the next level where the form needs to become more interactive instead of the hard coded values being posted. So adding functionality to form, where the first thing we are going to see is adding the form values to the state object, getting the data validated in the form, then setting up the backend RESTful API. With the help of HTTP GET and PUT, we'll be reading and manipulating the data in the backend. Then we'll move on to the navigation system. So we have React Router API for that. So what exactly the routing is and how React can actually do the routing for us, how the routing services are available, including the route parameters we'll see. Then how to build the application for the final deployment. And then we'll move on to the separate state management library, which is highly used when you want more shareable data across your application, across different components. So that's where we make use of the libraries like Redux. So when Redux is used with React, it is called as React Redux. How we set it up, how do we configure that is what we will see in today's session itself. The next part of it, like how to use Redux, how to integrate with the application we are building, that we'll look at in tomorrow's session. Okay, so let's get started with the first part, mapping the values of the form fields to the state. And just like yesterday, we were placing some objectives for each of this section. We'll just get started there only. What I expect from this activity of form values being mapped to state are listed here. So the first thing is add form data to the component state. Make the form fields controlled components. So based on the form fields, the component behavior should be decided. Hence, I said form field control components, and then handle the form submission, which takes care of the data coming from the form elements actually. Fine. So as a prerequisite, what you'll need is in the command line, you have to be on the same path where keep track folder is there. There you have to say code dot so that your Visual Studio Code opens up with your project. And then you have to say npm start to get your development server started. I just kept it ready already. I give you 2 minutes, just get it done. Make sure none of the files are open for now. Are you guys ready?
Yes, okay.
Okay. Let's open our project form.tsx file. We already have an interface representing project form props, which is having two members, which are actually the functional members on cancel and on save defined over here. Let's add the data member also by the name project, which will represent the data of type project. So that via this interface, I can have the project data also working for me. Right? Component state will be saved here. Okay. Then import statement has to be modified apart from the React and synthetic event being imported from React. We will need another component over here called as use state. You remember what is this for? One of the hook that allows us the local state management, right? Yesterday we saw this. Yes or no?
Yes.
We can actually get this renamed as initial project over here. So the parameter to satisfy this project type here goes before on save. Project, which will be mapped to initial project. Or let's say its initial value will be picked from initial project as a default value. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Just before this handle submit, let's have our state defined. And how do we do that? With const square brackets, we define the state, right? The state variable, let's say, is project. And the method that has to be created to manipulate the state is set project equals to use state, for which the initial state will be initial project. Okay.
Yes.
Then just before the return, we'll add another function called as handle change, just like handle submit. This also is going to be event based. So I say event argument it takes. Event can be any event. The reason I'm using any over here is because different controls or different form fields will have different change events, like text, input type text and input type, uh, uh, it- uh, not input type text and text area will have change event on change. Whereas checkbox or radio button would have check change. So that's why we are saying event could be any, event argument could be any type, handled by this function body. What I have here is, again, based on some object destructuring, I get something assigned to this. Practically, let me complete this right hand side first. Event.target is what the object I'm looking to read. And from that event target, what I want to read is the type, which represents the type of field, the name of the field, the value of the field, and by any chance, if there is a property called as checked, I want to read that as well. Okay, so technically the form field details I'm looking to read from here. What type of form field it is, what is the name of that form field, then either value or check property will be available, not both. If input type is checked, checkbox or radio, then checked will be there. Otherwise, value will be there. Got it? Then I say define a variable, local scope variable by the name updated value assigned to the result of this ternary operator expression. So here I say type equal to checkbox. If the input type is checkbox, the value will be checked. If input type is not checkbox, the value will be value. That's the ternary operator going to do for me. So here I say if type is checkbox, return the value of checked. Otherwise, return the value of value. I hope this expression is clear.
Yes.
Then for other types, there is possibility of the type being number. Like for budget, we will have number. So I need to take care of that also because all input will be otherwise coming as string. If type is equals to number, means if the input type is number, what I want is the updated value itself to have updated value only as number. So I use the function number to which I pass updated value, which will be of type of string at this moment. With the number function, it will be converted to number and will get assigned to updated value. And here we see updated value by default is going to be of type any. So it will change its type. Understand? Yes.
Yes.
And then the changed value I'll capture over here in this constant called as change. So here I say, whatever the name of the field is, to that I assign the updated value. I create a key value pair where the key is name of the field being updated and the value is the actual value for that particular field. Okay. So this is for individual fields. Now I say let updated project. This is another local scope variable I'm creating, which will be of type project. And this is the object which will hold all the changes as one single object having all the changes. For this, I make use of the helper method generated by the state, where I go and call set project. That takes in a parameter P as in project and handled by this arrow function. Arrange it this way. And then I say updated project is equal to new project I use the merge operator over here. So first of all, I use curly braces and take the original project which is being updated and merge the changes into it. So dot change will pick up whatever the name value pair it is and will update the name value pair within the project object automatically. So suppose the name of the project has changed, the name will be updated. If the description has changed, description will be updated. If the budget has changed, budget will be updated. If is active has changed, is active will be updated, whichever field. Okay. And then I say return the updated project from here to whoever calls the set project method. Got it? Yes.
Yes.
Now, the next few changes will be in your HTML section. Locate your first input type. I guess it must be for project name. Yes.
Yes.
Create some space on the next line over here. I'll just press enter. And here I say I want to set the value attribute. You know, for HTML field, if I want to set any default value so that it can display the same in the browser immediately when it is loaded, I have to use value attribute, right? I set it to project dot name. So what will happen with this is by default, the form field will display the existing value for the project name. That is what we were discussing yesterday, right? Yes or no? I'm clicking on edit.
Yes.
So I want the existing project name, description, budget, is active, etc. to be filled already into the form fields. Yes.
Yep.
And then I bind to the on change event. What can I bind here? Can I just say handle change? That's the handler we just created here, right? Handle change will automatically pick up whatever event it is based on the input type. It will check what is the type. Now, so for name, this will be ignored. Directly the value will be going in updated value. This condition will be ignored either because type is string, not number. Directly it goes here. Change name. Name will be name and updated value will be whatever the new value I give. And then that change will be merged in the existing project. project instance, and that new project will be returned back.
Can you
Updated project will be returned back. Yeah.
line number 31? You have used three dots. Can you elaborate its help?
Yeah. See, this is basically something what we call as the merge operator. Here I have the original project, the unchanged one. So usually just think of in a way where you have the object which has got the original data which is untouched.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say project name is banking. Okay.
Okay.
Description is this is the project for regular banking operation. Budget is say $1 lakh. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for some reasons, the budget has changed. $1,20,000 it has become. So I want to make the change, right?
Okay.
Name, description, I don't want to change. Active value, I don't want to change. But budget, I want to update. So don't you think I need to retrieve the original project data first, which
Mm-hmm.
contains $1 lakh for the budget already?
Okay.
That will be first step. And then I go and update the budget field there, right?
Yes. So I don't need to
That
use
budget
every
field might
property
be there
mentioned.
in the budget field. The new value might be there in some other variable or some form component, right? Form
Yes.
field.
Yeah.
I want to pick that up and merge it into the original object. That's
Okay.
what we are doing here.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
So this is a merge operator that we have used.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Now the same thing you have to repeat for almost every field. So what we can do is we can get this value and on-chain stuff copied, the new stuff copied. Then the next field over here is text area. I create the space on the next line and paste what we copied. What will change here? Project dot description on change will be handle change. Correct? Same is the case for budget as well. So I just create some space over here. Paste. The field name changes to budget. On change is handle change. Same way the is active is also going to change. Input type checkbox name is active. I create some space on the next line. Here I say it's not value. Rather for checkbox, I'll have the property called as checked, which will be assigned to project dot is active, right? On changes handle change.
Yes.
Clear?
Yep.
So that's a typical HTML thing, right? Now I
Right.
want to handle the submission of the form. So here, if you see, form handle submit is being called, right?
Yes.
Handle submit has got some update to be made. What I'm doing on save, I'm just passing the hard coded changes. I don't want this. I want the changes to be picked up from my state data. So here I say on save. What I want to pick up for save operation is not a new project instance, but the existing state project object, which is defined over here. So whatever the changed content I have locally in my state, that is what I want to pass on to onSave. Make sense?
Yes. Yep.
Right? Save this. Just make sure there is no error. There will be one though, because of the structural changes that we made to the interface for props. The project form instance will have some issue. Earlier we had only on save and on cancel, but now we have a third member project also. That is something which is creating the issue. So what that means is from here itself, we get the clue that I need to get to the parent of this particular project form component, which in our case is project list, correct? So go to project
Yes.
list and look at the line where you are creating the project form. That's where the error is, correct?
Yes.
What do you have to do there? You have to set the attribute project, the newly added one, to some object which is represented by current project. Just like what you have done for project card. Correct?
Yes.
Save this. Look at the command line. There should be no error anymore. Yes?
Can you show that again?
Yeah, sure. This is what I've added in project list. Done? Just make sure there is no error. And once done, probably you can go to the browser, click on edit on any of the card and see the project details. The existing details are already coming into the fields. Yes or no? I changed this to 29,829 instead of 729. And one more change I make. This project is inactive. I click on save. So the new object must have been reported over here already. It says saving project, right? So the changes are being detected. Okay. So to take this to the next level, we need a few more changes to actually see that, okay, the value has changed. So is this fine? Till here?
Yes.
Let's close these two files and now open the parent of project list, which is projects page, because that's where your actual state is present. Yes or no?
Hello, Saket. Maybe this
Yeah.
Saket, in
Yeah.
that browser, we can see the means blocks are 3 blocks. Can we make it 4 because some space are remaining there? How to?
See, it is more about adjusting the theme and based
Okay,
on the
okay.
resolution, it is going to working. Uh, the point is it's more responsive thing, right? So if the card width is reduced, probably you will be able to accommodate 4 cards also. So test it on different resolutions. It will automatically be taken care of.
Right.
Though
Okay.
you find that there is some more space remaining, but it may not be enough for the width of one card, right? Like here, if I see the card width itself is visibly more than what is remaining.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Right. So if I reduce the width of the card, there will be 4 cards accommodated here.
Right. Right. Yes. Yes.
Okay. So bit of CSS thing only, nothing else required. Okay. Now let's open projectspage.tsx. Import React statement. Now needs to import few more things from React library. So here I say, I'm looking for a component called as fragment. Along with that, I'm looking for useState hook from React. Okay. And then I want to create a state here as well, so that the changes can be held over here. For that, I say const. What this page is going to hold the state for? It will be holding the state for the entire projects collection. So I say the state variable has got the name projects. And the helper method that I expect over here is set projects to allow me the changes to be made to the projects collection. Equals useState. I want the generic version of useState method here. use state for the type project array and the initial value for which is mock projects. Okay. And then instead of console.log, I actually want the data updation to be taking place in the collection. So I comment this console.log statement and define a local variable first that captures updated projects. There can be more than one project that is updated. So updated projects, where I say projects.map. Again, map function because I'm going to play with an array which takes in one project at a time. So P of type project is the parameter handled by the arrow function whose body goes over here, which I arrange like this, where I simply have a return statement which checks if p.id is equal to project.id. So in the original collection, if the ID matches with the incoming project's ID, that means that is the project being edited. So return that project. Let's put this expression in parentheses for better clarity. Ternary operator, return the new project, else return the original project itself. I mean, the one with no changes. So this collection will have the list of the projects only, but with all updates taken into consideration. And this is what I want to update back into the state. So for that, I call set projects, updated projects. Replace the original projects with the list of updated projects. Got it? Yes. And one last change here. Instead of project list object being created directly based on the mock project, I want this to make use of the state object that I've defined over here by the name projects. So copy this declaration, comment this original declaration, and then paste it back and replace mock projects with projects, the state variable projects. Rest it remains as it is. Save it. Check that there is no compilation error. Let me know once you all are done with this. In fact, we won't require the fragment component as well. You can remove that. Directly use state is what you need. Remove fragment, save. Again, make sure there is no compilation error. Done?
Yes, again.
No compilation error, right? If you switch to the browser and click on edit on any one of these, make the changes that you want. Let's say this is 829. Let's say this is inactive. I click on save and see 829 is represented directly. Active inactive is not available in the readable part, but if I click on edit, it shows me active. Checkbox is now unchecked. That means it remembered. At the application level means within memory it is done. But if I refresh the whole page, it will revert back to original data, right? Because we are not saving it into any persistent storage like database or something. Understood?
Yes.
Yes.
But at least we are able to get the data entry done over here, detect those changes and merge it with the state data, right? From there on, it is all about mapping it to some APIs, which then further updates your database so that the changes are permanent. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, but before that, as you are doing some data entry, don't you think there must be some validation also being performed?
Yep.
Yes.
So that will be our next step. If we look at this, that's what it is. Once we are done with validation, we'll then see how to set up the REST API and how to get the updates made permanent. We have a single objective over here for this step, add validation for the form or form elements to be precise. Right? The validations will mostly depend on some business requirements. Like the business might say the budget cannot be below $100 or $1,000. Let's say the company has decided not to take projects which are of the value below $1,000. So that could be a requirement. Name is supposed to be mandatory. Description is supposed to be mandatory. These kind of requirements usually come from the business. Yes or no?
Yes.
Right. So that's what we need to get. I mean, we need to decide on what all conditions we are going to need and for which fields we need the validation. So right now, if we see the validation is possible on project name, project description, budget, and ideally these three only. Here only validation possible is, in fact, for this only true false is there. So there is no validation, I would say is possible, right? It's not a 3-state checkbox. It's just 2-state. So even if we don't give the value by default, it will be taken as false, right? So our target for validation could be project name, project description, and project budget. Correct?
Yes.
Let's prepare for that. Where the validation code will be placed, which file, which component?
Project form.
Project farm, of course, because that's where the entries are being taken, right? So look for your project from component. After the state object being initialized and before you write any members further for this class or this component, that's the right place where you can set up your validations. I want to set up another state variable for holding error messages or errors in general. So I say there is a state variable called as errors. The method to get it manipulated is supposed to be having the name set errors, initialized with the hook use state, with the initial values going inside the curly braces, where I say name by default is empty. That means the error is not there for any field. Description is the next field. Colon, again empty string, comma. Even there is no space here. Just check. Just empty string. Single quote and single quote, no space in between. Then I say budget is the other field. With the value initial one as again empty string only. Because here these are not going to hold the actual value of name, description, budget. These will be holding the error messages. So budget will be also a string only. Yeah. This is the error message for name. This is the error message for description. This is the error message for budget. Error message. So they have to be string. Yes or no?
Yes.
Now, just after handle change before return, I add another helper function over here, which will do all the validation for me. So I say function validate. That takes in a single variable as parameter called as project of type project. When I say project, it contains a complete object, right? So collectively, this function will do the validation for each of the fields that belong to the project object. Clear? I say let errors, a local variable of type any, equal to name colon empty string to start with, description colon empty string to start with, and then the same thing for budget, empty string to start with. So by default, I'm assuming there is no error. Then goes my conditions. If project name, so I say project dot name dot length is greater than 0, means there is some input. I want the project length must be more than 0, but at the same time, I want to check the length should be not less than 3. It should be at least 3. So I put another condition with and operator. Project dot name dot length is less than 3. More than 0, but less than 3. Then it's an error situation. So I say errors dot name. Errors collection dot name field I assign to the error message. Name must have at least 3 characters. Okay. Likewise, I can check for description. So here goes the next if statement. In fact, for name also, if I want more validations, the same way I can create the conditions, right? Before this, don't you think I should be also checking for that the length should not be 0 at all. I want to make the entry mandatory. So maybe I can have one more if statement where I say if project dot name dot length is equal to 0. It's an error situation for me as well. Errors dot name equals name is mandatory or name is required. Whatever you feel is good, right? So if it is 0, error created here. If it is more than 0, but length is less than 3, then error is created here. And set to the error's name property. Yes. Likewise, I can check project dot description dot length. I want this also to be mandatory. So I check for the length to be 0. If it is 0, then it's an error situation for description. So I say errors dot description equals description is mandatory. Also, the budget cannot be 0, right? So the next condition, if project dot budget equal to 0, then it's an error situation. So I say errors dot budget equals to budget must be more than, say, $0 or whichever currency symbol you want, and that you have integrated with your application. And then at the end, I just return the errors object. So I say return errors. All errors as one object it will return. Yes. I hope this is clear. Basic
Can
validation code only. Yeah.
can you scroll it up before we define the errors on top?
Yeah. So
In the state.
this is the
Okay.
state object. Alternatively, you can use the jQuery validation functions also here. If you don't want these functions to be created like this, because the validation like this probably is already there available into the jQuery validation. So you can actually use jQuery validation as well, alternatively. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So is this done?
Yep.
Add one more helper function over here named as isValid, which will just check for is there any error message available for any of the fields. Its job is to return something based on, basically it will be true false only. So based on these conditions. Errors dot name dot length equals 0. Means there is no error for name. If there is an error, the name errors dot name dot length will be more than 0, right? And check the same thing for description. Errors dot description dot length equal 0. And check the same thing for budget. Okay. So practically, if there is no error in any of the field, is valid will return true, else it will be returning false. Clear? Even if one of them has got the error, is valid becomes false. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Now let's scroll up a bit where handle submit method has been configured. Rather, handle change method has been configured. Look at the statement where you are actually calling set project. After setting the project, this is the right place where you can force the validation and set the errors if any. So here I call set errors. No parameters taken. Handled by the arrow function defined here. It's a single line statement. I can directly put that here. I just make the call to validate method that we have created. And there I pass updated project. So the updated project automatically will be passed over here and will be checked for any validation errors. Now, if there are errors, the submission should be stopped, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yes.
Submission being handled in handle submit. Instead of directly calling on save, I first should check if there is any error. Correct?
Yes.
So before on save, I put an if statement. If not is valid, the other function that we created as helper, which returns true or false based on if there is any error. If not is valid means if the is valid is returning false, I just want to return from here. On save should not be called. So submit is automatically prevented. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now switch to the HTML section. Error messages being created, validation happening, that's fine. But don't you think if there is an error, it should be conveyed back to the user also? Say, for example, if project name has got a problem in this input text, immediately after this, I should be able to see the error message. Sorry.
Yes.
Usually you get the red colored text message appearing after the field, right? Onto the right side or maybe at the bottom of the text field. Yes or no?
Yes.
So here we include some TSX expression which checks errors dot name dot length is greater than 0, then check the output of this. If there is output, then it's not null. Actually process that output as well. So I push it on to the next line. And here I say this output is going to be some HTML div, which uses a class with the name card and another class with the name error, which will prepare it with the red color. What it displays as the text is a paragraph which shows the value of errors dot name property. Clear? So there are two things. If there is error message for name, that means if length is greater than 0, that means there is error message. Then check if there is output generated from this or not. It's not null. Then actually get this processed as well. So it does two things. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's copy this and repeat it for your description as well. So just after the text area, I paste the same thing. What changes is the field name from name to description here and here. Rest all remains the same. Yes or no?
Yes.
And the same thing I do for budget as well. So just go after the input type number for the budget, paste that code once again here and change the field name to budget. Errors.budget.length greater than 0 and div class name card error p errors dot budget. This will take care of the UI generation for error messages. Clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Let's save this all. Let's go to the command line and see there is no error, right? And then move to the browser. Let's say I want to edit this project. So I click on edit. I remove the name and see immediately I get the error message displayed. Because of card theme, it's coming like this. And along with card, I have used error because of which the background is red and the foreground is white. Clear?
Yes.
This is for name. Same thing if I try for description. And similarly, if I make budget as 0, all validations are working perfectly. Yes.
Yes.
Likewise, you can add what are the validations you want. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Now let's move on to the next section where we want the integration of a backend RESTful API for this application so that my changes can be made permanent. For now, I'm working with mock data, hard-coded one, which I don't want further. I want to integrate with my backend API. I assume that it has been created by some other team already. I just want the mapping of my application with that backend API. For this, we can actually make use of uh, Node.js and Express to set up the REST API for us, and for which we already have something downloaded into a folder from where we got the images as well, right? So here in this section, actually, we are going to see how we can install the backend REST API server. Alternatively, if you don't want this to be done, you can use .NET Web API also. So based on our requirement, you can actually build a .NET Web API project, and that Web API must be dealing with the same data structure which we are using in our current application. Got my point?
Yes.
Next is create a custom NPM script so that I can start my REST API server along with my application, or maybe as a separate API also. So custom NPM script to run the or start the REST API server. Okay. And then I want to actually get the server started. So for simplicity, right now we'll be actually making use of Node and Express. In fact, not even Express, we'll be using the JSON file, and there is a REST API server built into Node that we will be setting it up. The JSON file will be acting as our backend database. Okay. To get this done, just move on to command line, press Control C to stop this batch. You're back into the keep track folder. I first of all need the JSON server to be installed within my project. So let's say npm I want the JSON server to be installed, which will act as a temporary backend API server. Version that I'm looking for is 0.16.2. 0.16.2. Press enter so that your JSON server package is installed. Clear? Yes.
Yes.
Now go back to VS Code. You can see your package.json must have got the entry for npm JSON server, npm package JSON server. Based on this, you can actually add a custom script over here to get your API server started. So let's create a section here. First put comma after reject. Create some space here. I want the command to be received as API. npm run API. If I say, what it should do is run the command JSON dash server. I give the path of my JSON file there, API/db.json, which is yet to be set up for now. And I want this API server to be running on the port, let's say 4000. If 4000 seems to be busy already, if it is giving error, change the port number and make sure you use the same port number while consuming. Clear? Now to make this work, don't you think we need this API folder and db.json file?
Yes.
Right? So we downloaded something when we started with this keep track folder while we added the images also. Remember? So let's go to the path, Quinnox demos. I guess we added it in React itself. This was the folder that we unzipped, right? React starter files main. React starter files main. We already copied the assets folder which had the images into it. Yes or no? Now, if you look at API, API has got the db.json file already into it. Correct? What you do is copy this API folder and paste it into your keep track directory. Here, I'll go back, go to keep track folder. And here I'll just paste. Right where node modules, public SRC folders are there. Same level I'm pasting API. Is it clear?
Yes.
Once this is done, you can actually close the file explorer, go back to the command line. And here to test your API is running or not, just issue the command npm run API. So it will automatically run the JSON server command. See, on port number 4000, it shows that this API has been placed. This is the home. I copy this URL, go to the browser, open a new tab, paste that URL here. But now this is just the home. There is no documentation created yet. That's why I'm getting this blank page. But then we do have another resource /projects. If I put, that should give me something. So let's see. We go back to the browser. And after this URL, I just put /projects. What do you see? Lots of amount of JSON data, right?
JSON
So
format,
isn't
yes.
this like if you are giving the GET request to some web API? This is the kind of output you get, right? Assume this is a web API generated output. Currently, though it is reading the JSON file and serving it, but this can be equally taken care of by a web API also. Just assume you have a database which has got some data. There is a entity framework core based web API created. That web API is returning the list of projects. Output will be the same.
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
We actually did that for department data, right? Based on this, you can actually get your web API in .NET also created. You know the fields, you know their data types. So you can set up the entity framework core based backend with code first approach that we saw with the department API also. Yes or no?
Yes.
So
Yes.
this is a GET request going officially from the browser directly. What we want next is this GET request should go to the server, but from within my application. Because user will not be placing this kind of request and the user will not be interested in looking at the data like this. Yes or no? For that purpose only we do create applications. So this data should be actually the one which is coming from the API. Yes?
Yes.
Right. So let's move on to the next section. We already set up the backend REST API. We already installed the REST API server, created the npm script to run the REST API server and started the REST API server also. Keep this running. Now, if you are using Windows 11, you can actually have another tab created. Otherwise, you just open one more command prompt terminal. And there, again, you browse to the same keep track folder. So here it's in OneDrive, desktop, Quinnox, demos, React, and there I have keep track. Correct? I do say npm start as well, so that my application server also starts. So either two tabs or two command prompt instances will make sure that my server for API is also running and my application is also running. Yes. The other way around,
Yes.
the application you can start from the built-in terminal window from here, right? Yes.
Yes.
Next, let me close all the files here. Move on to this place. Our next section is to implement HTTP GET, where what we want is create an API object, which will be actually the proxy object that loads data from REST API. So basically, I want the GET request to be dispatched from within my application, and that data should be loaded. Then update component to use API object. Right? Next, because the data is plenty, I might want pagination as well. Now, what kind of pagination I add, that depends on my business requirement. If I want it to be automatic pagination based on the scroll bar, I'll connect it to scroll bar event, just like what do we see in Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, right? Top 10 posts probably are displayed automatically, and as we start scrolling, the next set of 10 records basically gets added automatically. If we scroll further, this is the ongoing process, right? That could be one way. I can have Google like pagination also, where I have page numbers. I might have an alternative UI for that, like previous next buttons I might include, or I might need just one button like more. If I click on more, the next 10 records are displayed. Again, if I click more, next 10 records are displayed. Something like that. So it's totally the business choice. In our case, we'll be going with the last option. We'll be having a more button. When clicked, it will get the next set of data if available. If there is nothing to be added, it will just get stuck over there. Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay, so before we proceed, here we'll take a break. We'll resume the session at 11:15, 11:15, and we'll see the implementation of the RESTful GET interface first, followed by PUT, and then we'll move on to the routing. Clear?
Yes.
So see you at 11:15. Hey guys, I'm back. Shall we proceed?
Yes, Saket. I think.
Okay. So I hope your API server and your application server both are running, right?
Yep.
Great. So let's switch to VS Code. Under projects folder, create one new file which will do the API communication. So let's name this as project API.ts. This is not a React component, it is just TypeScript component. So TS, not TSX. Okay. I'll need the project class over here to be used. So import project from /project. Then I have a constant named as base URL, which will hold the base URL of our API, which is localhost 4000 port number. So I say base URL equals HTTP :// localhost 4000 and slash. Then I say there is another constant named as URL, which will be the independent API URL. So here I use backticks, under which I put dollar curly brace base URL first, followed by or maybe you can just remove slash from here and put it here. That makes it more readable. And our API that we need to use currently is at projects. That's what we browsed in the browser also, right? To get the JSON data. Here I have a helper function named as translate status to error message. In case if we get some error, the HTTP status code will come back, and we want that status code to be conveyed back to the user as a simple, user readable, user friendly message. So that's what this function is being written for. So it takes in a parameter status of type number. And the function itself returns a string. Okay. Here I go for switch case. So switch on status. If we get the number as 401, it's basically like unauthorized access. So we return please log in again. If we are interacting with a authenticated API, this will be important, right? Case 403. This is like unauthenticated access. 403 is unauthorized access. I might have got authenticated, but I may not have permissions. So I gave the return statement as we don't have permissions to view the projects. It could be one project or multiple projects, so I put it this way. If any other status code, just return the message. There was an error retrieving the project or projects. So I put it this way. Please try again. If you know other status codes also, you can actually increase the number of cases. Clear? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Then we have another function, check status, which takes in a parameter named as response of type any. And checks if response dot okay means if the status code is 200, return the response as it is. Else, that could be an error status. So I want more info. Here I create a constant named as HTTP error info, which is going to be a JSON object with several properties. So let's say the first property is status, set to response.status, whatever status code it is, status text as response.status text, and URL as response.url. Okay. Then some information into the console log. Backticks, log server, HTTP error, colon, dollar, curly brace, JSON, dot stringify, the object called as HTTP error info. As a JSON string, it will be logged. Then a local variable, error message, equals. Here I call translate to error message, and I pass HTTP error info dot status, which contains the status code or number. And then I propagate the exception with the help of throw new error statement with the error message as error message. Okay. Got it? create another helper method, parse JSON. Which takes in a single parameter response of type response, which is actually HTTP response. And returns the JSON version of the response. So response.json. Another helper function named as delay to create some delay between the requests. Just to simulate that we might be working with huge amount of data. So ms for milliseconds as number is the parameter. And what this function does is returns another function which takes in a parameter x of type any, has got a return type as promise. We discussed about promise earlier, right? No matter what happens on the other side of the call, successful execution or failure, I need some response back. That's what promise is. The promise of any type. And ultimately, this function itself must return the new promise object that takes in a parameter resolve handed by the arrow function, which calls a JavaScript function called a set timeout, which performs a callback after a set amount of time. So it doesn't take any parameter, empty parenthesis, handled by another arrow function further, which calls the method resolve, to which I pass x, comma, the timeout is ms. Milliseconds, number of milliseconds of delay, whatever has been passed. Now resolve x basically is going to be the function itself. Resolve will resolve the function, which function has been passed. So we are expecting x to be a function itself. Okay. Next, I have another helper function which converts the raw JSON data into project array, basically what we call as model collection. I name this as convert to project models. That takes in a parameter data of type any type of array. I can actually say project array or something. What I expect as output from here is project array. So return type is project array. Raw data into project array conversion I'm going to do here. Here I say let projects of type project array equals the incoming data, which is an array. I use the map function on it. And there I make the call to another helper method, convert to project model, which is not created yet. We'll create it shortly. So individual object, JSON object will be converted to project type. And then based on that, the array will be prepared and returned. assigned to this projects, which I can return from here. So I say return projects. And then this function itself, convert to project model. So here goes our function convert to project model, which takes single parameter of type item, which could be of any type, that returns that any type converted to strongly typed object called as project. And here I say return new project based on item. All helper functions so far. Just see if you are done or not, and also if you understand this. If you have any doubt, you can just let me know.
Socket
Yeah.
line number 45, we are calling that convert to project model.
Yeah, so our target is basically the JSON data, which represents the project's collection, to be converted to project array.
Yeah, we are calling, but
Yeah.
it is taking a parameter we are not passing.
Yeah, because of map method, what it will do is it will automatically pick up the single item from here, and it will pass that single project item as item parameter here automatically. That is passed internally. You don't need to give that explicitly. The other way around, what you can do is you can say here I have a parameter called as D of type project, and this D is what I pass to this. So this is taken care of automatically. Understand?
Okay.
So though right now it's not allowed here, but the point is it is doing exactly same thing behind scenes, making your code more readable. Understand?
Yes.
It's a map function which is doing that. Okay. So clear? Shall we proceed? The real stuff starts here. Constant project API. This is where I'm going to place the call to the backend API. Here goes the call. What type of call I want to make? It's a HTTP GET request that I want to place. So I say GET. Optionally, I can put the pagination call. So I say I'm looking for page number 1 with limit set to 9. Means in one page, 9 records should come. Okay. And then the configuration for GET itself. So here I have written the actual API call will be dispatched by the call to fetch function, which is a plain JavaScript function only. Here goes the backtick. I need to pass the URL. So here I say dollar curly brace URL. And then I want to pass some query string parameter. So let's say underscore page. This, in fact, we can see first here. The API is running here, right? So I can say question mark underscore page equals to 1 ampersand underscore limit equals to 9 ampersand. I want to sort the data as well. So here I say underscore sort on the name field, project name field. See what happens is it first of all gets all the data sorted in alphabetical order and then picks the first 9 records only. Whereas without this, it was giving many records, right? Yes or no? So this is the same thing we are going to construct. I just copy the same thing from here, go back to VS Code, and I paste it here. Now, instead of passing the hard coded value 1, probably I say use dollar curly brace and the page number. Limit. Also, I take dynamically dollar curly brace limit. And let's say sorting is always supposed to be on project name. So I say sort equals to name in a hard coded manner. If I want, I can just get this also parameterized. And this itself is a promise based approach. So I say if this call is successful, then let's introduce a delay, which is our own helper function we created earlier. Delay of 600 milliseconds I'm looking for. Once that is completed successfully, then what I want to do is check the status. Once the checking status is positively completed, then I want to parse the JSON so that it reads all the JSON data and converts to object. Then that object needs to be converted to models. So here I say convert to project models, not model, models, the plural name, which is taking an array. And during the process, in any of the step, if there is an error, catch it and handle it here. So catch takes in a parameter error of type error. It could be type mismatch handled by the arrow function defined here like this. Got it? Okay, there is a problem. Error of type error. Parenthesis should be closed here. Yeah. What I want is, first of all, log to the console, whatever the error is. I use backticks here as well for interpolated strings to be used. Here I say log client error because this time the error will be on the client side. Dollar curly brace error. And then I want to rethrow the error to propagate it. So throw new error. E capital. And the error message going in here. There was an error retrieving the projects. Please try again. Okay. And then at last, I want to export this project API object. Export. It's an object. So in curly brace, I'll say project API. So here we just created an API object that loads data from REST API. First step, first objective we achieved. Once done, just save. On the command line, see there is no error. What is the next step? We want to consume that API object, right? Where the call should be made to this method, project API object dot get. where we are looking to get the list of projects, and from that, I feel that it should be projectspage.tsx, projects page component, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So let's move on to projectspage.tsx. Use state already there, the hook to manage the state. Couple of more state objects we want apart from the project list. So here I say there is a constant named as loading. To manipulate it, I have a method set loading. This is basically just to identify that the API call is in progress. Loading will be set to true. And once the call is finished or call is not yet placed, the state of loading should remain false. So to start with, I want to start with false. And then another state variable called as error to hold errors. Errors with respect to any API call. I have a helper method here called as set error to manipulate the state of error equals use state of type string or undefined. If it is defined, it should be string, otherwise it should remain undefined. And initially it starts with the value as undefined. Clear? Yes?
Yes, sir. Saket, can you show that project API.ts is showing?
Yes, yes, sure. Which section you want?
Export.
This one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so I hope this is also done.
Yes.
Now a small change. We have a API in place. So don't you think this becomes irrelevant? And so is this. So I comment this import mock projects and I comment this also. Probably I just get this copied first comment it, paste it back, and I replace mock projects with something else. And what that something else would be? I say this is going to be an empty array to start with. Yeah. Now, to get the data downloaded, I will need to import the API component. So here I say import project API from /project API. Plus one more hook I'm going to need here onwards. Use effect. What is this use effect hook used for? This has nothing to do with animation effects as such. Usually by the name, we have a tendency to think about it. It basically allows you to perform some side effects into your component. Side effects might be something like fetching data, updating the DOM, manipulating timers or working and using timers, okay, etc. Is that clear? So we want both fetching data also and updating the DOM also. Because after fetching data, the DOM is supposed to be updated. If it is not, the data will not be displayed. Yes or no?
Yes.
And we want the best possible type of implementation now these days, which is based on the asynchronous programming to be implemented here. We'll be using async await, which has been introduced with ES 2015 standard. Correct? So just after this error state object being configured, I say use effect, which is the use of that new hook, which we just imported here. It uses a 2-parameter setup where the second parameter is usually the initial value of the dependency that will be generated by the first argument. And it's optional also. If you don't put it, by default, it will be taken as undefined or null. Okay. For now, I am passing an empty array for the second parameter. First parameter is a callback function, which will generate data for me. So a callback function without parameters represented by this arrow function. So I put curly braces to define the body of the arrow function and make it multi-line to make it readable. What it has got is an asynchronous member function. So async function name, let's say, is load projects. No parameters. What it does is calls set loading helper function to change the state of loading to true because the call is being dispatched now or will be dispatched shortly. So I'll say the state of loading becomes true. Now there is an API call which I'm going to place. So here I expect there can be error also. So I put a try catch block. Try. const data to capture the return value from the API. Const data equals to await project API dot get function that we created. And I want page number 1. Limit I'm not specifying, so it will pick the default limit that we have given as 9. Right? If I want the limit to be changed, I can pass the second parameter also here. It's an optional parameter. Here I say set error initially to empty. I'm assuming there is no error because the call is successful. And then I call set projects to the retrieve data item. Catch. If there is an error, catch will come into existence. Catches the error E. It checks if E is instance of error. Then set error E dot message. Then I have a finally block, which is executed in a guaranteed fashion, whether there is an error or not. Whether the call is successful or not, loading process gets finished. So I say set the loading value to false. And then I make the call to load projects. It's a self call, right? It's a member function I created here. And here itself, I'm making a call to it. The use effect will communicate with the API, will fetch the records, and will do the data manipulation with DOM also. Clear? So as of now, here I can see it's only about downloading data to the state. Now, DOM manipulation I have to configure based on this. Is that clear? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Is it done?
Yes.
So let's scroll down to the HTML where our project list is getting rendered. Just after this, I create a TSX expression where I check the status of loading. If loading is true, there is an output from this expression. Render this output. What is the output? I want to render a div which uses a class with the name as center dash page. What it displays is a span with the class spinner primary or dark slash span. So basically I'm looking for that circling animation, right? Loading animation. And along with that, I want the text as a paragraph to be displayed. Loading dot dot dot. Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, now let's open index.css file. Some style rules we want to add in addition to what we already have. So let's say I have a style rule on the HTML element, HTML body, ID selector, where ID value is supposed to be root, class selector named as container, class selector called as center page. For all these selectors, I want the height property to be set to 100% of the available height. Along with this, an individual class selector I create for center page, where I set display as flex. Justify content as center. Align items as center. All CSS stuff only. Save this and close the file. Okay. Then
Oh, 1 minute. Yes, okay, done.
let's close this file and come back to projects page.tsx. Just before the project list, add another TSX section where I check if there is an error or not. This is for creating the UI to display the error, API related error. If there is an error and there is an output from this expression, show the output. What is that output? Div with class name row. What I have inside this is another div with class name as card, large error. Size is large and make it for error. So red background, white foreground. Section which contains a paragraph, which contains a span element with class name icon dash alert inverse slash span. And then after the span, I want to display the error message itself. So I pass error to the curly brace. Save this. Clear? Save this. Check on the command line if there is any error. It doesn't seem to be. Move to the browser, React app. Oh, that's interesting. There is no data. There is no loading animation either. Let me see what went wrong. I'll go to developer command prompt and see if there is any error here.
Saket, here we are not using HTTP client to make the calls.
HTTP client is another option. We can use that. Right now, we are using the vanilla JavaScript fetch API, which automatically places the AJAX calls. Got it?
Okay, okay.
Wrong here. It's not even showing error here.
You can see the network tab when you call is going.
To the API itself is not placed. Let me check. Checks.
The line number 29 should be after line number 30.
Sorry.
The load project's call should be after line number 30. The function itself is not called.
Oh, yeah, that's right. By mistake, I put that within the function itself, so it's not getting called. It should be here. After the function load project definition is completed, it should be called. Save. No compilation error, and now we should have the output. Yeah, so this time the output is from the API, not from the mock projects. And count the number of cards: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that's it. Because we have put the limit, default limit of 9 records at a time. Yes. One more change I'm going to make over here.
Saket, for me, it's displaying there was an error retrieving the projects.
Yeah, just a moment. We'll check that. So one error I want to simulate from my end, instead of projects, if I by mistake give project, which is not the correct URL of the API, compilation will not have any issue. But if I go to the browser here, if I say refresh, loading animation was there, and here I'm getting this. There was an error retrieving the projects. Please try again. Right? To rectify this, I just thoroughly check my code and find that this is the issue. I save it back. No compiler error. And then I switch to my application. It's running fine. Refresh. Initially loading for 600 milliseconds, and then the result. The delay is not compulsory. If you don't give delay, that loading by default will not be displayed until and unless your API is really not taking time to download the data. Is that clear? Conceptually, is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, now show me what is the error you're getting.
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen.
Yes, sure.
Do you see my screen? So this is
Yes,
there
I
was an
can.
error retrieving.
Okay. Your API is working fine, right? Go to the previous tab. Fine. Go to the VS Code.
Okay.
Go to project API. http://localhost:4000. Yeah, remove that slash on line number 4 after 4000. Because we are already putting the slash on line number 5 before projects, right? So it was causing it to use double slash. That was the error. Save it and there should be no problem. Yes,
Yes.
I'll share my screen. I hope you understood what was the problem.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, now what is the next thing pending here is adding the pagination support. Correct? So for this, we need to be there on projects page.tsx only. Project API we can close. Make sure you are on project page. We will need one more state variable to keep track of the current page number. So here I say constant current page as the state variable. And the method to modify it is set current page equals to use state. By default, which page number should be displayed? Page number 1, right? So I say page number 1 goes in as default value. Clear? Now with this line needs to be changed. I've given hard-coded page number 1 in get. That should not be the case. Rather, it should actually go for whatever is the value of current page. Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes.
Then get this set project data commented. First copied, then commented. Page number 1 handling will be different and subsequent pages handling will be different. So here I say check if current page value is equal to 1. What I want is just call set projects with the data that is downloaded as it is. Else, for subsequent pages, I want the state of the projects to be merged with the new data that is being downloaded from the next page. So here I say set projects which takes a callback function which has got a parameter named as projects processed by the arrow function, single line arrow function. And here I use the merge operator. Dot 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 projects. Whatever is the current state of the projects. Initially, first 9 records are there. When I click on more, the next 9 records should be merged with it. Okay. Again, if I click on more, the first 18 records must be merged with the next 9 records. What my point? And then this dependency also changes. So I just rewrite this line. Copy, comment, paste it back. And here instead of empty array, we'll pass current page. If it is page number 1, it will be processed like this. If it is subsequent page, it will be processed like this. Yeah. Yes. Okay, now there is a button titled as more required, and there must be the handler for its click event as well. Yes or no? So here, just before const save project, I create another helper function handle more click, which will be used as the click event handler for more button. No parameters, configured using the arrow function, whose body says just call set current page with current page as parameter processed by the arrow again with current page plus 1 as the value. Whatever is the current page, suppose it is 1, then the next page requested should be 2. If it is 2, then it should be 3 and so on. So this is handle click event handler. But there has to be a button which calls this, or whose click event basically gets mapped with this handle more click. Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes.
So save whatever you have done so far and then scroll down and see where your project list is configured. After project list and before this loading thing, I want one more TSX section to be created. That takes care of the display of the button. So I first of all check that loading should be false. So I say not loading. And there should be no error either. So not error. And then there is output from this expression, which ultimately generates the UI also. What it has got is a div with class name row. Which further has another div with class name call dash sm dash 12, all 12 columns, small size columns it will occupy. Which further has got another div with class name as button dash group, which will provide some styling to button. And I want to make it fluid. So that is another class I'm using. Then comes the button. Class name, button, default theme, on click, I bind to handle more click. Slash button, and in between, the text I want to display is more, dot, dot, dot. More or click for more, whatever you want. Save, verify on compiler console that there is no error. Go to your browser. First set of 9 records displayed here. There is more button. I click on this and see further 9 records have been added. More just keeps on adding, like LinkedIn or Facebook, right? Instead of having the button based download, I can actually connect it to the scroll bar event as well. Yes or no?
Yes.
I use button for simplicity. Now see, this seems to be the end. If I click more, what will happen now? It just gets stuck over here. It doesn't do anything further. There is no data to be downloaded, right? Conditionally, we are already handling this. Is it clear?
Yes.
And see, the single page application behavior is clearly visible here. When I click on more, there is no flickering of the screen, right? My UI, which was there, is staying as it is. It's not flashing, it's not flickering. There is no microsecond uh, visibility of the blank white screen either. Yes or no? That's what the high responsiveness now is called. With single page application, you achieve it. Once loaded, it remains loaded. Whatever changes are required, it just gets it done behind scenes without causing any changes to your existing displayed content. Make sense?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so I wanted to go ahead with put and the routing and build and deploy also, but that's okay. We will take it up tomorrow. Uh, so again, we'll be meeting at 9:30 a.m. tomorrow, and we'll be going ahead with these things. And tomorrow, then we'll be actually going ahead with the complete Redux implementation also. Clear?
Okay. Saket, I have some
Yeah.
doubts regarding ASP.NET.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so there is a while developing React app, whatever the changes we
Yes.
make on the local, and once
Yes.
it's perfect, we push to the main code. But while
Yes.
developing APIs, we unnecessarily send the data on the server. So how to avoid it?
Mhm. You mean the dummy data, right?
Yeah, whatever the test or while implementing, we send the data,
Yeah.
right?
So
That
usually
gets stored on the server.
we actually don't look to avoid that, because if we don't do it, how will we able to know whether the API communication is happening correctly or not? That's point one. Okay.
Okay.
Don't look to avoid. Let's look for the alternatives. So there are two alternatives. One is you can have the mocking setup, right?
Yes.
Just like what we did in our application. Until
Yeah,
and unless we
pre-root
are not
testing.
sure that my application is ready, we are not communicating with the API at all. That's one. Next alternative is always maintain your development database separately from production database. So whatever data you send to the server will not be affecting anything into the production. You will be always communicating with your development database only. And once you are done with testing and everything, you are ready to go live. Just before going live, make sure your connection string has been updated to talk to the production server there onwards. Clear?
Okay, so we have to change the connection
Yes.
string.
Yes.
And one more thing, uh,
Yeah.
what if the user is added too much data, like on the post request, and that API is not handle that much data? So what we have to take care here?
Too much data in the sense with respect to the length of the
Length of that
input
means
data, or the amount of
size,
total data, like number of
size.
collections.
Higher number of collection or size is maximum.
It is just something which can be taken care of with the help of the validations only, right? Nothing special required. Just do proper validations. Make sure over posting is not happening. Both at the client side and server side, you have to put that. Because if someone bypasses the client side validations, the server also must have its own mechanism, defense mechanism for the same, right?
Okay, so on both side we have to maintain this, right?
Yes. So just remember that validations are always supposed to be on both ends. Client side validation for early feedback to the user, but you cannot rely only on client validation, right?
Yes.
That can be bypassed. So server must have its own validation in place. Whether client has implemented or not, server must have its own validation.
So
So
before
while
taking the
creating
data from the
APIs, correct. So while creating the APIs, you basically do that validation. You check the model state and all, right? The request
Mm,
object you can scan. If it is having data more than what you expect, I mean the request stream size, request body size, if you check, and if it is more than what you expect, Just raise an error. Don't process it at all. Make sense?
Okay, Saket. Yes, yes, right.
It's all
Okay, Saket.
validations.
Yeah, I got it, Saket. I'll check it on also.
Yeah.
Thank you, Saket.
Okay, so I hope you are practicing all the things what we are learning between sessions.
Yes.
This is the question to everyone. I assume yes. So
Yes.
let's
Yes,
meet
Saket.
tomorrow morning 9:30 a.m. and we'll see the further things where first will be the put request, then routing, build and deploy services, and Redux. Okay, so on the last day, Friday, we will be going ahead with the testing. Okay.
Okay, sir.
And the final assessment will be MCQ based only. So just be ready for that also.
So all
Okay.
the topics will be covered, right? Till the date,
All the
whatever we
topics
learn.
except the last day topic for React testing. That I will
Last
not
day,
include because
whatever.
that we will be doing on the same day as the assessment, right? So that will not be included. But whatever we get covered till tomorrow, till Redux, everything will be there. Okay, right
So
from
it
day
is,
one.
it's based on only React, right?
No, it will be the thorough test actually, right from day one to tomorrow. Okay.
Web API design patterns.
Yes, yes, everything. There will be more weightage on the React and the TypeScript, Node, etc. I mean, whatever the content we have covered after the last assessment, that will have more weightage. 50% to 60% weightage will be to that. Rest of the percentage of weightage will be to the initial content, which we already have been assessed for in the last two assessments. Okay.
So it will
API
be
and
on this week or next week?
This week only, Friday.
Okay.
Saket, the weightage will be also means weightage will go to the Git also means.
Yes, yes. Okay then. See you tomorrow at 9:30 a.m.
Getting.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Yeah.